These are the meditations of Kantes. On today's meditation, energy vampires. When I was, younger, even though I'm a man in my mid 20s, it feels like I've been alive for decades. But when I was younger, I used to love watching vampire movies. I didn't even know these things were real. We'll speak on it right now, how real it is. And one of the best vampiric movies I've ever watched and that currently exists is the originals and the Vampire Diaries series. I used to watch those things obsessively without even knowing why. To me, it seemed real. I couldn't explain it, and the real energy vampires that were around me always used to try to shame me and make me feel you know, like it was wrong for me to watch. But my heart wanted it. The heart wants what the heart wants, and my heart wanted to decipher those vampire movies. Little did I know that those movies that I watched and I thought they were fictional, they are real. They are real, manze. If this thing sounds like fiction, kindly exit. We will not miss you, although we love you so much. To those who understand what I'm speaking about, the the energy vampires. Now this sounds like a fictional thing. It sounds like a fictional word. I wouldn't talk about these things with normies, NPCs, narcs, dead, because it is not in their best interest to even admit these things. Mostly because they are unconscious. Remember, they are dead. So they themselves don't even know that they do this for most of the time. When they grow, you'll find some narcs who they start to understand what they are. Most of the narcs who are really aware of what they are, most of them jump to psychology and they try to be a fake empath by talking, saying loves, do this. But energy vampires are simply dead people who cannot produce their own light. They cannot produce their own solar power, their own life. They do not produce life, which is why in the vampire series, the originals or any vampire series, look at the characteristics of vampires. What are the characteristics of vampires? One, they are dead. The time that they were turned into a vampire, they stopped growing. That's the first characteristic of a vampire. They stopped growing. If a vampire was turned when they were 5 years old, 10 years old, 2 years old, 30 years old, they will be at that stage for the rest of their life. Sounds familiar? Two, energy vampires feed on blood of real people. They don't feed on blood of other vampires, although you'll find other vampire hunters who a super empath is a vampire hunter. You see, once you have awakened from that sleeping, when you are being siphoned, once you awaken and become a super empath, dark empath, you actually feed on narcissists. It's an amazing gift. It's an amazing gift. That's part of the reason why they never want you to wake up, because you can feed on them too. But vampires feed on normies. Some vampire movies used to call them the mundane, the normal. They are the normal people. That's how people are supposed to be, generating their own life. Vampires feed on them. That's point number two. One, they stopped growing when they were turned into a vampire. They feed on real life people like me and you. And three, they cannot. This is a very interesting thing that I understood about energy vampires. They cannot just come up to you and siphon your blood. You have to welcome them in. If you go if you go to any vampire movie, you will find the vampires before they want to go into a house of a normie, they they have to be invited in. And so one of the ways the vampire society, this because it's a legion, that vampire society, one of the ways they siphon people, if you go to the movies, they create these large gatherings of people, clubs, events. That's where you'll find most energy vampires. That's why as soon as, like recently, manze, I went to this restaurant and I didn't know it was a club. Little did I know it was a club that was also a restaurant. I stayed there, man, and I haven't been to a proper club for 4 or 5 years. I think I was last year. I was invited, but I stayed for a while and then I went. You can't stay in there because that is the prime place where energy vampires are. Wherever there are large gatherings, you will find energy vampires. That's where they have to be. And because they can't, it's harder for them to. That's why a nigga like me and you, we are so special because they had their own source of supply next, home based. Like, it's like a home dispenser where you can get these things, like a blood bank that they own. Unaona? So the energy vampires, most of the time, they cannot siphon you randomly. They can't just, like, just wake. Especially if you are aware. Even when you are asleep, you had to invite them in. When you see, you have to allow them in so that they can begin siphoning you. That's a very interesting characteristic about vampires. Another characteristic about vampires, the fictional vampires that is true spiritually for the energy vampires, the narcissist, is that the vampires cannot stay in the light. They operate in darkness. The light burns them if you look at most vampires. That's why in the original vampires created this ring. It was like a ring that had many spells that allowed them to stay in the sun. But naturally, vampires can't stay in the sun. That's why I say once your spiritual eyes are open, and these narcissists, they try to do these things, it doesn't work because your spiritual eyes are open. There is light. Your spiritual eyes produce light, and this, they can't operate in light, they have to operate in darkness. You see, that's why as soon as you wake up, the game is over. Because even you just knowing, okay, this is gaslighting, this is projection, this is, they're trying to create a humiliation ritual to open up your traumatic wounds so that they can put the plug in and start bringing those things back to themselves. Vampires cannot operate in the light. Vampires also, they never age, they never grow. They, when I say they age, they grow old, but they never mature. They never, kama aliumwa akiwa 5 years old, that's where they stop. If they got beat when they were 10, that's where they stopped. If they got beat when they were 20, 25, that's where they stopped. And the only thing that can kill them is first a straight dagger to the heart. That's why a super empath is very dangerous to them. And two, excess light. If you put a vampire in the sunlight, they'll burn up in like 2-3 seconds. That's how fragile they are when it comes to light. And that's why they needed to constantly put you down, because as soon as you start producing that light, it's over for them. Like, it's even dangerous them being around you when you have your spiritual eyes open. That's why as soon as, like, you'll hear a lot of these narcissistic survivors like myself, they'll tell you never go back. Well, I'm at that stage where that advice is quite real. So when I was hearing it, they were like, don't go back, because once you go back, the the abuse, in quote, because they can't really abuse you when you're awake, it gets more, because they have to, because your light is stronger, you see. So let's break down those characteristics of energy vampires, which was depicted perfectly for these eyes. The movies are for these eyes, but in real life, the real eyes what matter. Energy vampires, or real vampires, more or less the same, cannot produce their own light. The age that they were beaten at, they stopped growing at that age. They feed on love beings like me and you because we produce our own light. They don't. For an energy vampire to start siphoning you, you have to invite them, or you have to be in a place where rituals have already been have happened, consciously or unconsciously. That any empath that enters that place, the energy vampires will begin to siphon them. Unaona, that's why one of the ways for a good club or a good event to attract a lot of people is by having empaths like me and you. That's why most of society is glitching now, because most chosen are taking away their power. So most clubs, most churches, most gatherings, it's just a large group of energy vampires, hungry, all of them looking, where can we feed? There's nothing. You see, because they are just in darkness. Now, because I've broken my understanding of energy vampires, I would like for you to understand that there is nothing to fear but fear itself. These creatures have zero power. If you go to the original vampire movies, you will understand that vampires are the weakest of on that totem pole. The number one are the witches, and in the witches there's the light worker and dark worker. There is the werewolf, as crazy as it sounds, and there is the vampire. Now werewolves and vampires, it's a very small depiction. I haven't not depiction difference, but it goes to the extreme. We won't go into that, archetype for now. For now, all you need to know in great detail is that the vampires you saw in the movies, in the theater, in folklore, the old stories that they used to tell you, those are real, man. Those are real. The energy vampires exist, and they have the littlest power. Energy vampires are the most vulnerable species on the planet. They are food for a super empath. They really are a super empath. I told you in the how would you call it, the food pyramid. On number one, it is the super empath, and then God. The super, yeah. And most of our ancestors were super empaths. A super empath is a being who understands all these things, and once you understand all these things, you can actually hunt. That's why a super empath doesn't hunt energy vampires. They come to him because he's an empath. A dark empath hunts. I'm telling you, they hunt energy vampires. They are the worst nightmare of an energy vampire because they look exactly like a proper empath, and there is nothing that will show this energy vampire that this is an awakened empath until later on, when the energy vampire has been completely destroyed. And you know how one of the ways that you can destroy an energy vampire is just removing yourself and not wanting to fuck with them. That's all you gotta do. And as soon as you do that, because they know what they are, they start going into this panic mode. Can anyone else see me? And they're fucked. They'll self-destruct, and if they do self-destruct and disappear, it is good for every being on the planet. These creatures are parasites. You have seen what they did to you, what they did to me, which is they did for me, which is why I'm here. How else would I know all these things if they didn't, give me a good lesson? Give me good lessons on just how blessed I am not to be that. That I produce my own light like a bank. They are like they are the borrower. The borrower will always be subject to the lender. The narcissist will always be slave and subject to the empath. The wind agrees. We honor the wind and our ancestors, but they will always be subject to the empath. The borrower is subject to the lender. You are the lender. You are the lender. Understand your power. Understand these things are real. Grasp them quickly. Understand the movies that were made. They had to be, they had to characterize it so that your eyes could understand, also for entertainment. In real life, it's not as graphic, but it's real. In real life, it is not filled with, the blood and the coming with the teeth. Yeah, they should say I'm a vampire because of my teeth. They come, they bite. It's not that as graphic. It's something as close as coming, just standing next to you. I don't know how many times I've been in a place, then some random dude or woman just comes and stands next to me. And then when I leave, I hear them click. Now I know what it is. Dead motherfucker was, and to that extent, they are not siphoning you. You are like heat. They are in cold. They are in cold. Imagine how cold the world would be if you didn't have the sun. That's how cold their life is when they don't have you, the Son of God. So whenever they meet, you go around and you find like a narcissist. You're standing somewhere and they come next to you. You're like a hot, a hot stove, and they're in this winter and they're coming and they're putting their hands. They're like, whoo, they're like, yes, woo, some heat, you know, because their life is their life is dead, my nigga. As much as I laugh at it. You know the damage these people have been able to cause. So your awareness is pivotal, so that you don't fall prey to the small things that they can throw at you, because you're very powerful. You're very powerful. You're a blessing unto the earth. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you will do more research into energy vampires. One of the ways I've said, the supreme way. That's why every narcissist survivor has this desire to awaken another empath. Just you awakening, just you knowing all these things that are happening, that kills the game instantaneously. It's over. There is nothing they can do if you know and accept with your own experiences added on to these videos and other videos that you are the source. And it, I don't even know how to describe how powerful you are, Manzi. You are very, very powerful. Very powerful. I hope you've enjoyed this video. As I've said again, I'm constantly trying to refine my I can go on so many rants and tangents, but I hope the gist, the main message of the video, you've understood it. Energy vampires exist. Energy vampires are the spiritual reality of what you saw in the movies with the real vampires. Those people actually exist, and as I've said, awareness makes you the hunter. The narcissist becomes the hunted when they're around a motherfucker like me. And good thing that I don't even need that. They can't give you power. They come there, and this is just, you see, I'm going on a tangent. Fuck it, let's go. One of the other ways outside of you being aware of what these people are doing, it protects you. One of the ways to protect yourself, one we've said, is awareness. Another one is energy vampires need a reaction out of you. They will do things to create reactions out of you. One of the ways you can actually cause someone to transition. A weak energy vampire, you can cause them to transition by doing this. When they try to make you when they try to elicit a reaction out of you, don't do anything to the capacity that you can. If it's a random guy, they might come and shout at you or tell, don't do anything. Just take yourself, move yourself like you are. Make sure when you're talking to a narcissist, your heart is never pointed towards them. Always put like a boxer, put your hand around like this. No, when you're talking to them, you can just be like this. And in your mind, you send them love. Because I said, as an empath, your main weapon is love. Just like their main weapon is hate. And when love and hate meet, only love wins. Protect your heart when they try to get a reaction out of you, because that's what energy vampires do. The quickest way to make them collapse is not to give them a reaction. It will destroy them. Do you understand how powerful that is? For a dead motherfucker to come to the king, the queen, the source, and be like, nigga, shout, cry, and you just don't. You don't. Nigga, that is cold. That's why you are the best. This has gone too far, but I love you so much. I love the narcissists, the people who are awakening empaths like myself. You guys saved my life many times. I and my family and my future family and all of them, everyone that I meet, they are able to receive my light and my love because of other empaths that have awakened me and taught me these things, because I was I was just, fucked from, man. I'll share my story properly, man. I've told you throughout my whole life, I've had at least 10 fucking knocks around me, at least. Oh my god, in high school it was so bad. I used to sneak into the dorm during like breaks and to sleep, nigga. I didn't even know it was because I was being siphoned too much. I remember even telling I'm like, what? Manze, I just love sleeping. I remember it was like sleeping. But now that I've been able to remove myself from all these energy vampires, I don't really, take as many naps as I used to. Now I know why, Manze. Now I know why. And I hope you do too. Adios.